Also, though, and I want to make sure we get to this other aspect, Megyn Kelly is also now coinciding with the release of her memoir, talking about how, yes, Roger Ailes, the embarrassed Fox News chief, harassed her as well. She was a victim of sexual harassment at the hands of former Fox News CEO Roger Ailes. She went on the Dr. Phil show. I don't know that we very often play clips of the Dr. Phil show on this program, but I have a little bit of it, and it is absolutely fascinating. And you'll remember that in the wake of all sorts of women coming out and saying, you know, I was also victimized, sexually harassed by Roger Ailes, Megyn Kelly was criticized for waiting very long in the game to come out and say, you know, yeah, I also am aware of some of this stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. I think that that was not a good critique of Megyn Kelly. We know all of the different reasons why it is perfectly normal and common and logical for many victims of sexual harassment not to be overly eager to go out and to make those allegations public. That being said, she is doing it now. Here is a clip from her talking to Dr. Phil yesterday.
Were you sexually harassed by Roger Ailes?
Yes.
Beginning when?
My problems with Roger began when I was at the company for 12 months. So I was a first-year reporter. And I was called up to New York. Britt Hume, my direct manager in the DC bureau, told me I had captured the attention of Mr. Ailes and told me he wanted to see me in New York. So I went up to New York. I was working in the Washington, DC bureau. And I went up there. I had met with him, I think, once before, you know, for my job interview. But this was a great moment for me because you want to capture the attention of your boss. And he gave me a bunch of advice. You know, I went into his office, he gave me a bunch of advice. But the problem with that meeting and with several that happened over the next 6 months was not only was there legitimate professional advice, but there were grossly inappropriate comments. He had always had an inappropriate sense of humor. You know, he is not PC. And this was actually something we liked about him. I mean, he'll crack a dirty joke or drop a swear, and so will I. I don't judge that. You know, I don't speak the Queen's English either, as you'll see in the book. I mean, just FYI.
Yeah, buy the book. Many copies.
But this was something different. This was specific comments about my body, how he wanted to see me, and it grew more severe over time.
Like, what was he? Give me an example.
Well, like he said, he knew I must have some very sexy bras, and he'd like to see me in them.
That smooth operator, Roger Ailes, man, that gets the women every time when you tell them, I'm going to guess at what you have in your underwear drawer at home. So obviously the response from Roger Ailes' lawyer, not surprising, which is this is all bogus. But the more interesting response to me was from Bill O'Reilly, who went on CBS yesterday and he said he's not interested in making the network look bad at all. And then he added the following on his own show, which I'll put up on the screen for you. If somebody is paying you a wage, you owe that person or company allegiance. You don't like what's happening in the workplace, go to human resources or leave. I've done that. And then take the action you need to take afterward if you feel aggrieved. There are labor laws in this country, but don't run down the concern that supports you by trying to undermine it. Bill O'Reilly seems to see this as just sort of like a PR issue for Fox and employee relations, rather than the fact that they had a serial sexual harasser on staff. For Bill O'Reilly, it's more about the right positioning of how you complain and when and to who and making my network look bad. Bill O'Reilly seems to see sexual harassment as a PR issue, which makes sense because it became a major PR issue for him when he was talking to Andrea Macris about, pleasuring herself and all sorts of stuff. This has clearly been a big PR issue for Bill O'Reilly, but he doesn't see this as an issue of sexual harassment, which is really what it is.
Well, that's also coming from someone who has been accused of sexual harassment. But yeah. I think what's also interesting here is that where Megyn Kelly is positioned now, because she has to try and kind of appeal to her new lean-in fan base while also balancing that with a lot of Fox News watchers who really hate identity politics.
Yeah.
So where does that leave her?
I think it's super interesting, actually. I'm not a big fan of Megyn Kelly, Pat, but I think that what she is doing here, the timing of it, of course, is very susceptible to sort of motivation of selling books. And there's no doubt she's going to sell a lot of books for this. For these appearances, but she's positioned herself in a really interesting place now where she is both seen as the sort of commanding, up-and-coming television star, but also someone who is not going to be pushed around, even if it's about sexual harassment by a male superior, which is not exactly a position that lots of her fan base is super thrilled to be out in front of and criticizing publicly.
And all the allegations that she's given so far seem to have happened right when she started working for Fox News.
Yeah.
She continued to get promotions, got very generous maternity leave. So you have to wonder if this kind of thing continued and she's just keeping quiet about it.
That's the other aspect of it, which is, do you sort of become immune to this when you have higher status in the network? We saw that Gretchen Carlson, who not as well known as Megyn Kelly and not of the same sort of stature on the network, seemed to be continually subjected to this type of thing. Of course, Roger Ailes denies it all at this point. Really no reason to believe the denials.